In a small village nestled between rolling hills, there lived a young woman named Zara. Her beauty was undeniable, her dark, smooth skin glowed under the sun, and her piercing eyes held a mysterious allure. But Zara was more than just a pretty face. She had learned early in life that beauty could open doors, but it was wit and cunning that would help her climb the ladders of society. Zara's charm was as much a weapon as it was a gift. Despite her many admirers, Zara's heart was set on Daniel, the son of a prominent family in the village. Daniel had a reputation for being strong-willed, intelligent, and successful. He was everything Zara admired, a man of means, of status. But there was one thing that made Daniel stand apart from every other man: he seemed completely indifferent to her. Zara had tried every trick in her book, flashing a smile across crowded markets, playing coy at village dances, and even subtly throwing herself into his path. Yet, Daniel remained distant, too focused on his ambitions to notice her charms. Frustration began to build in Zara's chest. She had tasted the sweet power of control before, but this was different. Daniel was not a man she could easily manipulate with flattery. His indifference wounded her pride, and as time passed, Zara's obsession with him grew. She could not bear the thought of him slipping away, of him marrying someone else, of being another forgotten face in his life. Something had to change. Zara spent many sleepless nights pacing under the moonlit sky, pondering how to bend Daniel's will to her own. The thought of him marrying another woman was too unbearable. There had to be a way to make him hers, no matter the cost. And that's when it came to her, a plan so simple, yet so brilliant in its execution. Zara decided she would lie about something no man could easily ignore: pregnancy. A child, she reasoned, would bind Daniel to her. The pressures of responsibility, the weight of society's judgment, the guilt of abandoning a woman and a child, these were things no man could escape easily, especially not one of Daniel's stature. She imagined the story she would tell, that they had been together one night, a brief encounter, nothing more. But now, she was carrying his child. Zara told herself that the lie was justified. After all, what was love if not a series of manipulations to get what you wanted? What did it matter if she had to stretch the truth to capture his attention? The following day, Zara approached Daniel with a carefully rehearsed story. She found him by the riverbank, his silhouette visible against the bright orange of the setting sun. With trembling hands, Zara walked up to him. Her heart pounded in her chest, but she knew she had to be calm, poised, convincing. "Daniel," she began, her voice soft yet filled with an edge of vulnerability, "I need to speak with you about something important, something that has been weighing on my heart." Daniel, not expecting anything of significance, raised an eyebrow and motioned for her to continue. Zara took a deep breath and looked down at her hands, clasped together in front of her. She carefully chose her words, crafting them in a way that would evoke sympathy and urgency. I've just found out that I'm pregnant. And I don't know how it happened, Daniel. We were together that night, and I never expected this. I am so scared. I don't know what to do." Daniel's face hardened as he took in the words. His mind raced, and for a moment, he thought the world had stopped spinning. Zara pregnant? It didn't make sense. His mind flitted back to that night they had spent together. He didn't remember anything beyond a casual exchange. But then, Zara continued, and her words wrapped themselves around his doubts like vines. "Please, Daniel, I don't want to face my family alone. You're the only one I can turn to. I didn't mean for this to happen, but now I need you. I'm scared." Her voice was trembling, her eyes wide and filled with tears she knew would push him into a corner. Zara had never felt more powerful in her life. She had woven the lie so perfectly, so carefully. Now it was Daniel's turn to make a choice. The words struck him harder than he expected. The weight of responsibility, the shame, and the confusion settled over him like a heavy cloud. What could he do? What would the village say if Zara were left to face the consequences alone? The whispers, the gossip, it would ruin them both. He was now the center of attention in a drama that he hadn't asked for. But, despite all his doubts, Daniel felt cornered. He looked into Zara's pleading eyes and could see the genuine fear in her face. His voice, a little more than a whisper, responded, I I don't know what to say, Zara. But I can't leave you like this. I will marry you. Zara's heart raced with triumph, hidden behind the veil of a tender smile. Daniel, the man she had long desired, was now locked in her grasp. The plan had worked. But deep inside, something stirred in her. She had what she wanted, but at what cost? The lie was now set in motion. And Zara had no idea that fate would soon turn her carefully crafted world upside down. The days following Zara's revelation were a blur for Daniel. He had never imagined that his life would take such a sudden turn. The reality of Zara's pregnancy, whether true or not, was hanging over him like a dark cloud, suffocating his every thought. The village, small and tight-knit, was already beginning to whisper, their eyes full of judgment and suspicion. It didn't matter whether the pregnancy was real or not, the mere mention of it had changed everything. At first, Daniel struggled to come to terms with what Zara had told him. He replayed the night they had been together, trying to remember any details that could confirm or deny her story. He had been intoxicated with drink and the ease of their conversation, but nothing about that night screamed intimacy or consequence. Yet, Zara's words had the power to haunt him, constantly echoing in his ears. We were together that night. I don't know how it happened, Daniel. But what troubled him more than anything was the sense of obligation he now felt. This was not about love, or romance, or even attraction, it was about responsibility. The thought of abandoning Zara in her supposed time of need felt wrong. The village would never forgive him, and neither would his family. A child out of wedlock was a disgrace, and though Daniel was a man of honor, the weight of tradition was too great to ignore. He had never seen Zara as anything more than a friend. But now, with her revelation, it felt like his fate was sealed, as though his life was no longer his to direct. Zara wasted no time in playing her part. She visited Daniel frequently, each time looking more fragile and delicate than the last. She would sit across from him, twisting her hands nervously, speaking of how confused and scared she was. She would share stories of her family's impending outrage, the shame they would bring upon her if she was left to deal with this alone. Daniel, despite his suspicions, couldn't bear to watch her suffer. His thoughts were clouded, his actions driven by a sense of duty rather than desire. One afternoon, he went to visit his mother, seeking advice. Mama Nyasha was a wise woman, the kind of person who had lived through hardship, had seen her children grow and suffer, and had learned the value of listening before acting. She had always told Daniel that the greatest strength in a man was the ability to make decisions with a clear mind, unaffected by emotions or pressures. Mother, I don't know what to do, Daniel confessed as they sat in the cool shade of their village home, the scent of herbs and firewood heavy in the air. Zara says she's pregnant, and I don't know if I believe her. But I also don't want to abandon her. What should I do? Mama Nyasha was quiet for a long moment, studying her son with eyes full of understanding. She knew the weight of what he was carrying. Finally, she spoke in her calm, measured voice. Son, she said gently, sometimes, life brings us things we are not ready for. You must listen to your heart, but also trust your instincts. If you believe Zara is lying to you, then you must not be swayed by her tears or her pleas. But if there is even a chance that she is telling the truth, you must do what is right for both of you. Her words left Daniel in a whirlpool of confusion. His heart told him one thing, Zara's story didn't seem to add up. His instincts told him that something didn't feel right. But what if he was wrong? What if this was the truth? The responsibility of bringing a child into the world, regardless of the circumstances, was too great to ignore. When Zara visited him the next day, he knew that his mind was made up. He could not walk away from this. His heart told him to be cautious, but his sense of duty won over. He had to protect Zara. He had to be the man his family expected him to be, even if it meant being tied to someone who had deceived him. Zara, ever the manipulator, noticed the shift in Daniel. There was something more resigned about him now. He was no longer the carefree man she had admired from afar, he was carrying the burden of their shared future, and she could see that the weight was dragging him down. Daniel, I'm so scared, Zara would say with a tremble in her voice. I can't do this alone. I need you. Her words, though soaked in emotion, were a calculated move to keep him trapped in her web. Each time she spoke of her fears, she made sure to emphasize her isolation, her helplessness. Zara knew how to play her role to perfection. She was not just the woman who had supposedly given Daniel a child, she was the woman in need of saving. Daniel's response was inevitable. "I'll marry you, Zara," he said one evening, after another long conversation filled with her tears and promises of love. "I don't want you to go through this alone. We'll figure this out together." The words felt heavy as they left his lips. The weight of his decision was only starting to hit him. As much as he tried to convince himself it was the right thing to do, a nagging doubt remained in his chest. Could he trust Zara? Was this all just a manipulation? But the thought of what would happen to her without him, the gossip, the whispers, was unbearable. And so, he made his decision. Zara had trapped him, and he had fallen for it. The wedding came quickly, as Zara had anticipated. The villagers gathered to celebrate the union of Daniel and Zara, though whispers lingered in the air. Some admired Daniel for doing the right thing, while others whispered doubts, wondering if his marriage was based on love or obligation. Zara, however, was the picture of happiness, her smile radiant, masking the guilt that gnawed at her every time she caught Daniel's uneasy gaze. For Zara, the wedding was the culmination of her plan, a victory that she savored with every passing moment. She was now married to the man she had always desired, the man who would give her the status and security she craved. But for Daniel, it was the beginning of a difficult journey. Though he had committed to the marriage out of a sense of duty, his mind was constantly clouded with doubt. The lie about the pregnancy still lingered in the back of his mind. There was something off about Zara's behavior. She never seemed to show any of the signs of pregnancy that one would expect. No morning sickness, no cravings, no changes in her body. Daniel couldn't help but wonder if he had made a terrible mistake. As the days passed, the tension in their home grew. Zara, despite her initial joy, began to feel trapped by the consequences of her lie. Her body was not changing, and soon, even her closest friends began to ask questions. When the topic of the pregnancy came up, Zara deflected, claiming it was too early to show or that she was experiencing complications, but Daniel's suspicions continued to grow. He had agreed to marry her out of a sense of responsibility, but as the days passed without any sign of her pregnancy, he felt increasingly uneasy. The pressure of the lie, combined with the strain of their new marriage, began to take a toll on both of them. Daniel felt like a stranger in his own life, while Zara struggled to keep up the facade she had created. But one thing was certain. Their marriage was not built on love, and the cracks were beginning to show. As the weeks went by, Daniel could no longer ignore the nagging doubts that had begun to cloud his every thought. Zara's behavior became increasingly suspicious. Despite the wedding vows they had exchanged, their life together felt more like a partnership based on a lie than a genuine union. Zara's supposed pregnancy had not progressed at all. She continued to wear loose clothing, and her belly never showed the slightest sign of swelling. The days passed, and her claims of feeling sick or too early to show started to feel more like evasions than honest explanations. Daniel's frustration reached its peak when Zara, after yet another uncomfortable conversation about her pregnancy, dismissed his concerns with a soft smile, brushing him off as if he were being paranoid. "Don't worry, Daniel," she would say. "It'll happen soon, I promise. I'm just waiting for the right moment to tell everyone." Her ability to remain calm, to hold up the charade without any visible guilt, only made Daniel more suspicious. One evening, unable to shake his growing doubts, Daniel decided to take matters into his own hands. He visited the village doctor, Dr. Okoro, a trusted man who had treated many in the village for years. With his heart pounding, Daniel explained his concerns. He confided in Dr. Okoro about Zara's pregnancy story and how there had been no visible signs of it. The doctor listened quietly, nodding as Daniel finished. "Daniel," Dr. Okoro finally said, his voice grave, "I can assure you, Zara is not pregnant. I've seen enough cases to know. Her claims are false. She may be lying to you." The truth hit Daniel like a thunderclap. He felt his chest tighten as the weight of the revelation sunk in. Zara had deceived him. She had lied about the pregnancy to trap him into marriage. The anger he had kept bottled up for so long exploded in his chest. How could she do this to him? How could she manipulate him like this? That night, Daniel confronted Zara. His voice was cold, laced with disbelief. "Zara," he said, his eyes searching hers, "I know the truth. You're not pregnant. You lied to me." Zara's face drained of color, and for a moment, she looked like a cornered animal. But instead of breaking down in tears, she tried to justify herself. "Daniel, I was afraid. I thought if I told you about the child, you would finally see me. I love you, Daniel. I wanted us to be together." Her words, though desperate, rang hollow in Daniel's ears. This was not love. This was manipulation. He felt betrayed, humiliated, and trapped. The woman he had married, the woman he had tried to help, was nothing more than a liar. But even as anger raged inside him, Daniel couldn't ignore the reality of the situation. He was married to Zara now, and breaking free wasn't as simple as just walking away. What would the village say? What would his family think? How could he undo the damage that had already been done? The truth had come out, but Daniel now faced an even greater dilemma. What would he do with this painful revelation? Just when Daniel thought he had reached the breaking point of his frustration, something unexpected happened. Zara, despite her earlier deception, began to show signs of being genuinely pregnant. It started subtly at first, slight nausea in the mornings, her appetite changing, and an overall shift in her energy levels. Daniel, still reeling from the discovery of her lie, couldn't decide what to make of it. At first, he dismissed it as another trick. Perhaps Zara was only pretending to be pregnant now to cover up her previous deceit. He watched her closely, every movement analyzed for any hint of insincerity. But as days passed, Zara's symptoms became undeniable. Her body began to change in ways Daniel could no longer ignore. He was left confused, torn between the fact that Zara had lied to him and the possibility that fate had intervened. Had she really been lying from the beginning? Or had the pregnancy been a consequence of a different encounter, one that happened after her initial manipulation? Daniel struggled with guilt, anger, and confusion. Could he still trust her? Could he believe that this pregnancy was real, even though it followed a lie? He found himself questioning everything, from his marriage to Zara, to the nature of love and trust itself. In a way, the pregnancy became a twisted form of redemption for Zara. She had manipulated him into marriage with a lie, but now, she was truly carrying his child. The complexity of the situation weighed heavily on Daniel. His emotions were all over the place. He couldn't understand how fate had twisted their lives this way. And yet, despite everything, Daniel found himself deciding to stay. He would support Zara and the child, trying to make the best of a situation that had begun with so much deception. As the months passed, Daniel's life with Zara became a strange mix of unease and reluctant acceptance. Though his heart still carried the weight of her deceit, he had made a decision to stay, not for love, but for responsibility. The pregnancy had progressed, and Zara's belly was now undeniably swollen. The child was coming, and whether it was a result of Zara's manipulation or a twist of fate, Daniel was determined to do right by both of them. But the tension in their home remained palpable. Zara, who had once been the master of manipulation, now faced the reality of impending motherhood. Her initial triumph in trapping Daniel into marriage began to feel less like victory and more like an obligation. She, too, was now bound to a life she hadn't expected, and in the quiet moments, when Daniel wasn't watching, she would often look at herself in the mirror, her eyes filled with doubt. However, as Zara's pregnancy continued to unfold, a new truth began to emerge, one that neither she nor Daniel had anticipated. One afternoon, after a routine checkup, Zara came back home, her face pale, her eyes filled with a mixture of confusion and fear. She sat down beside Daniel and, for the first time, told him everything. "Daniel," she whispered, "the pregnancy, it's not yours." The words fell heavily in the room. Daniel froze, his heart racing as the truth slowly sank in. Zara confessed that she had lied not only about being pregnant but about everything. The child was not his, it was the result of a brief encounter with another man, one she had had after Daniel. The pregnancy had been an unintended consequence, and Zara had only pretended it was his to trap him into marriage. The shock was unbearable. Zara had orchestrated a web of lies so intricate that Daniel, for a moment, wasn't sure what was real anymore. The betrayal stung deeper than anything he had felt before. She had used his sense of honor, his commitment, his family's reputation, and even his love for what seemed like a game. Yet, in the midst of his anger and disbelief, Daniel found himself at a crossroads. The child was now real, and he had a choice to make. He could abandon both Zara and the child and walk away from a marriage built on deception, or he could stay and raise the child, knowing the truth, but also understanding that his heart would never be the same. In a quiet moment of reflection, Daniel realized that no matter how the situation had started, he could still be the father this child deserved. He would not abandon the child for the mistakes of its mother, but he would never forget the truth. With that, Daniel made the painful decision to stay, for the sake of the child. Zara, too, realized the gravity of her actions and, though ashamed, vowed to raise the child with honesty and integrity moving forward. The story ended on an uncertain note. Zara and Daniel's marriage was fractured, their trust shattered, yet they were bound together by the child that now connected them. It was a tale of deceit, redemption, and the unpredictable nature of fate, leaving both Daniel and Zara to learn that even the deepest lies could not erase the consequences of their actions. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear: the journey they had started on was far from over.